This is chapter 43, Gaining Access and Patient Extrication. More than likely, when you hear the term extrication, you probably relate it to a car accident, the jaws of life, and those types of things. And that's true. The majority of our extrications are from vehicles. But anytime someone's entrapped in some situation that they can't get out of, it's still an extrication. I mean, imagine if you have a person who is 300 pounds and they've fallen off their bed and they're trapped between the wall and their bedding, and you have to get them out of there. That's a form of extrication. Or what if you have a crane operator who's up on one of those big cantilever cranes on the top of a building 300, 400 feet up, and he's having a heart attack, and he's sitting in the operator's booth, and he's having a heart attack. You can't ask him to walk down. He's going to have to be extricated from that. So it's not just car extrications. It's anytime someone's in a situation they have to be removed, and usually we need extra help to do it. Now, planning ahead, luckily for us, in most cases, we run with fire departments when we have these extrication type situations, and fire departments have these pre-plans. They know where everything is. They've already kind of thought these things out, what they need, and the best way to get access to these areas and things like that. So it's very helpful to have the fire department with you to help you get resources that you need and to, obviously be able to achieve the extrication safely. And where this all starts, of course, is with the dispatch. Now, again, you have a situation where someone sees something or someone's involved in some kind of incident, whether it's medical or trauma, and they call 911. And they get to a 911 operator and they explain what happened, and they give a location. And like I mentioned in previous videos, that location may or may not be correct. And that information gets transferred through the dispatch, through the radio or pager or computer to you. Well, you can kind of imagine what could have happened to that information from the time it left the mouth of the person who called 911 to the time you get it. It's been filtered a couple of times through different people. So realistically, the only real bit of information that you need is to respond to an incident is its location. You might be called out for a traffic accident, which means you're thinking trauma, but when in fact the person had a heart attack and then crashed his car. But you don't know that at this time. It doesn't really matter one way or the other, truthfully. You might get called out to a traffic accident that wasn't a traffic accident. You might get called out to a chest pain that turns into a traffic accident. It just depends on what happens when you get there. So ultimately, all you really need to know to get there is where it is. And again, this might not be totally correct. Time of day, weather, and all that, that's relative to your situation where you work and things like that. But ultimately, location is the most important thing. And of course, if there's any leaks or gasoline spills or any kind of hazmat situation, you're going to want to call resources for that. Now, locations. Again, if you work in a particular geographical area, that's your district, you'll get to know it pretty quickly. And within a few months, you'll pretty much know all the problematic areas, the parks where there's the overdoses and the shootings that happen behind the 7-Eleven, and you get the idea. You'll also be familiar with access, best way to get to a certain building, what street to turn on, the back entrance versus the front entrance. All those types of things are really helpful, especially in these like downtown areas like San Diego that we have here. And then, again, we do respond to a lot of car accidents. Now, when it comes to traffic accidents, there is some safety risks for us. We have the looky-loo traffic going by. We have the vehicles that may or may not be stabilized. So we need to, before we could enter either of these vehicles in the picture right there, we'd have to have either ourselves or the fire department stabilize these vehicles by making sure the motors are off and the brakes or parking brake is set and they're in park, and maybe even the wheels are chalked and blocked so these cars will not move or destabilize while they're inside the vehicle to get the person out to get them out of their entrapment. So there's a lot of risk factors, safety factors. The ground might be full of oil. It's very slippery. It might be full of gasoline. It could be a fire hazard. These can be problematic in a lot of cases. Glass and other sharp bits of metal and things like that can be a problem as well. Now, scene size up. You already learned about sizing up the scene, of course. As you're approaching the scene, you're seeing how many patients there might be, and was this an MOI versus an NOI? Now we're looking at things like, are there fluids on the ground? Do I need those additional resources? Do I need backup? Do I need police? Do I need fire? Do I need helicopters? Approaching the scene. And so, really important thing now, you look at this vehicle right here, and this has some major front end damage. I mean, you know someone died in this accident or was seriously injured. And by looking at that car, you pull up at scene and you do your 360-degree assessment before you get out of the ambulance or fire truck. You might focus like right on that vehicle. That vehicle is very obvious. It's deformed, and it really draws our attention. But you got to ask yourself, is what did it hit? And if you think about it, this thing hit something. So it was probably another vehicle. So if you look down if you turn your head and you look down the street in all different directions, you might notice it's not just one vehicle in the accident. There's actually 3 vehicles in the accident, and they bounced around like pool balls, on a pool table essentially. So you see an accident like this, you know it hit something. Look for that something that it hit and make sure it's not another vehicle. And again, people are ejected from these vehicles on these high impact accidents. They can be under another car. They can be in a bush next to the car. So, make sure you find all your patients and all that. And of course, there's probably fluids on the ground with this, all kinds of other issues going on. And of course, before you get out of your fire truck or ambulance, as you approach the accident scene, you'll have your whatever PPE you might need, depending on your agency's requirements, and you have to have that OSHA high visibility class 2 or class 3 vest, depending on the circumstances. Again, every agency is different, but just follow what your policy is. Now, electrical lines. In a lot of the newer communities, the electrical lines are actually buried underground, but there's still a lot of older communities that have telephone poles and power poles and all that. People do hit power poles. They fall over. My understanding of power poles is the power line, or the wire that's closest to the ground is usually cable TV or telephone. As you go up higher, the other layers of wires, the higher you go up, the higher the voltage or amperage of that power. So if you have a telephone pole that's fallen over, you have to automatically assume that line is charged. Now, on those telephone pole lines, as well as the underground lines, they have relay systems built into this power grid. And if one telephone pole falls and shorts out that particular area, what it does is it trips the breaker at the other end. Just like the breaker in your service panel in your house, it pops the fuse essentially. So the problem with all this is it's timed. So according to SDG&E, I've talked to some of the technicians there. This breaker trips, it turns off the electricity to this power line that's gone down, but it's on a self-timer. It resets after a period of time automatically without any human intervention. So even though you automatically assume that right now these lines are not hot or charged, they can become instantly charged within a few minutes. So you just assume all downed power lines are live. Don't touch them. Call in additional resources. and uh, and make sure everything's safe before you go to enter or touch the vehicle, whatever's going on. If a power pole is down, a big old wooden power pole is down, there's power lines laying across the street and they're across the top of the damaged vehicle. It's pretty much of a slam dunk. Don't go near it. The problem that we run into in these more modern communities, we get these underground power lines, and all you see of these power lines are these big green boxes on the side of the road. Now, these are metal boxes. They stand usually about 3 feet tall. They're by 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. Some are bigger, some are smaller. And they say right on the cover, it says warning, high voltage. And this is the access point for these underground power lines that carry the same voltage and amperage as the ones on the power poles. The problem with all these is, and I was on an accident last winter. Some gentleman drove it was heavy rains. I don't know exactly what month it was, but heavy rains. And he was going southbound 15 right there before the 8. And he drove his truck somehow off the freeway down an embankment. And he wound up, I don't know if anyone was familiar with the area, but there's a Fry's electronics store right there. And I think that there's a golf course or something. But anyway, he drives himself down this embankment and he slams into one of these power boxes at the bottom of this embankment. And the truck goes up and over, knocks the box off its foundation, and the truck is sitting kind of all candywampus down this embankment when we arrive on scene. It's pouring rain, and from our angle, we could not see this was sitting on a power box. And in fact, the car was energized. The truck, this whatever was Dodge or whatever truck it was, actually was energized by the power lines underneath that were touching the undercarriage of the vehicle. And luckily, when the fire truck pulled up, from their angle, they could see this green box under there, and you could see it was displaced. And then, of course, it was taken care of by SDG&E and everything. But the whole idea is that these things are kind of dangerous for us because if the truck or car does displace them, from the angle that we're looking at when we arrive on scene, we might not see this danger, and we might go and touch the car, and then now we're crispy critters. Go figure. So traffic flow. You arrive on the scene of a traffic accident or some type of event. It could be a medical aid, it could be a bicycle down, whatever it might be. You're on the city streets, you're on the freeway. You need to control traffic flow. So the easiest way to do it immediately is to use your apparatus, your vehicle, as a way of blocking the other traffic from entering into your scene. So if you're on an ambulance, you're there first, you're going to take your ambulance and you're going to park it in a way that prevents vehicles from entering, at least from one direction anyway. So you're going to put it at a 45-degree angle. When the fire truck pulls up, they're going to put it at another angle and they're going to create a V shape. And you'll then be within this V shape working on the patient. And the fire truck and the ambulance are basically your just big retaining walls of protection to keep cars, drivers, or other vehicles outside of your safety zone, essentially. It's really, really important that you do this because, as you know, people are looky-loos. They like to look at other people's pain and suffering. And I don't know if you've noticed this before, but you're driving your car and you look to the left or the right. If you're staring at something, people have a tendency to steer into the direction that they're staring at. So if someone's staring at a traffic accident and they're engrossed by all the injuries and blood everywhere, they're just going to they're going to steer right into your vehicle. So rather than steering into you, at least if they do hit your fire truck or ambulance, only they will get hurt, not you. Airbags. So airbags usually do deploy. Some depends on most airbags will deploy over about 10 miles an hour. So fairly normal rate. Someone might be driving in a parking lot, 15 miles an hour or so, and a front airbag will deploy. Side airbags, they usually only deploy for the lateral impacts or the rollovers. but they do deploy, and when they do deploy, they come out really fast, about 300 miles an hour or so, maybe a little less, 200 miles an hour now. They kind of kind of slowed them down a little bit due to the potential injuries. They still come out very fast. They come out very hot. And you'll see a lot of people who have airbag deployment and they have no other injuries except from the airbags themselves. So if the airbag had not deployed, this person would have no injuries, but they have burns to their forearms. Maybe they hit their face and it broke their nose or split their lip. Or if they're wearing glasses, it broke their glasses and lacerated their face. So a lot of times these airbag deployments cause more injuries than the actual accident itself. But then on these really high speed events, of course, airbags do save you. The problem that we run into is not every airbag that's been activated deploys. The mechanism fails. So you have this car accident that the sensors in the bumpers have been activated. They've been punched by something, another car, but for one reason or another, the airbag didn't actually pop open. So this is basically like a unexploded bomb, essentially. So you start climbing through this car to extricate this person, and while you're in there, this bag just automatically goes pop, and it hits you in the side of the head or hits you in the back. I've seen people break their necks this way, and I've broken arms, things like that. So we want to make sure that we're nowhere near those undeployed airbags. One way, of course, is to totally avoid the areas where they might, come out of, like the dash here. Some agencies have these trapping cages that go around the steering wheel. They kind of lock on. This is the fire department agencies. Most fire department agencies, what they'll do immediately is they'll lift up the hood, they'll go inside, and they'll disconnect the negative terminal of the battery to reduce the chance of these undeployed airbags deploying. The problem with this is, and it's helpful, the problem with this is that if you think about the design of an airbag, when the person who designed airbags designed them, they said to themselves, well, this has to work in all situations, including if the battery has been destroyed. Now, a lot of cars have batteries under the back seat and even in the trunk now for this exact reason, but most cars still have them in the engine compartment in the front. So if you have an airbag and this battery has been destroyed by a front-end collision or a rear-end collision, it has a little capacitor, and I'm probably using the wrong term, and I apologize for all you electronic people out there, but essentially it has a little store of its own electricity right in the airbag. It keeps this little spark already. So even if the battery is destroyed, it has its own power source to cause it to deploy. So by disconnecting the negative terminal of the battery, it might reduce the chance of it happening. It might reduce the chance of any kind of fire occurring. Maybe there's fluids on the ground or something. But the airbag can still deploy because it has a little bit of energy built right into its component to activate if the main battery in the car has been damaged. This probably be a good idea, locate all patients. I know it sounds kind of weird, but weird things happen on these calls. I go on a lot of calls where there'll be a car who crashes and you get there and the car is, rolled over, both doors are wide open and nobody's around. And this is usually someone who doesn't have a driver's license or who was intoxicated. And what they do essentially is they just split. They could be hiding in the bushes. They could be staggering down the street somewhere, whatever, or they could have gone home or something. So it's not uncommon. So, make sure, look inside the vehicle, see what's in there, personal belongings. Is there a child car seat? Do you have female belongings, male belongings? And then look around, could this person have staggered off because they were disoriented and fallen into the bushes alongside the freeway there? So take a few minutes with a flashlight and get out there and see if you can find anybody, a blood trail, kind of be like a CSI kind of guy, follow the blood trail, possibly. But remember, some of these people don't want to be found because they're hiding from something. Either it's a DUI or they're wanted by the police or they have no license and no insurance and the car's stolen and all that great stuff as well. So, and my motto really is if someone doesn't want to be found, I really don't want to find them because it gets complicated. So if they run, just let them run. I got no problem with that. You got to figure it this way. If they truly are seriously injured after the crash, they're not going to run very far or very fast, and you'll find them later. So gaining access, now you have a situation where you have a person who's entrapped in this situation. Like, I know, again, cars, we talked cars and buses and trucks and things like that. But a fairly common scenario, is going to sound really weird, is you have a little old guy in his bathroom and he's going to the bathroom. Maybe he took just this wonderfully great dump and he gets up off the toilet and he faints and he falls back against the door of the bathroom. Well, if anyone knows about exterior doors in a house versus interior doors of a house, bathroom doors open in. So if there's no other way to get to this guy but through that bathroom door and he's laying against it, you can't open it. That's an extrication issue. You wind up having to take the door off its hinges, cut the door out, somehow get this door open so you can access this patient. That's a gaining access situation. So when it comes to going to someone's house, now we have these, I'm sure you've heard about them. This is the I've fallen and I can't get up button. The little lady has this emergency 911 button. If they fall down, they hit a button and it sends out this message to a dispatch system who then calls 911. So you arrive at scene and at this address, and there was an activation at this address. You knock on the door, no one answers, all the doors and windows are locked. So you need to get in. Legally, we need to get into that house to make sure that there's anybody there or whether it's a true activation or a false alarm. The easiest thing to do is maybe look for a key hiding somewhere. Try to find that window that you can jimmy open safely with causing minimal damage. Go next door to the neighbors or something, or the apartment, like the apartment manager, and say, hey, you guys got a key to apartment 6 because I can't get in. If it's an upstairs apartment, you could call the fire department. They can ladder the balcony if there is a balcony or window, and they can maybe go up the ladder and access a window or balcony from that side of the building, possibly. The whole idea is we try to do the minimum amount of damage possible to get into this thing. If you really have to break a window or a door, I'd go for the window and try to find the cheapest window you can find. Maybe break a small pane of glass. Maybe if they have like a window that has little tiny like 6x8 chunks of glass, just break one of the, reach inside, open the door. Maybe jimmy a sliding glass door, a glass window or glass door, but try to minimize the damage as much as possible. Don't start taking an axe to the side of the building and start cutting your own holes in the place. It's just a courtesy that we try to minimize all this unnecessary damage, especially if you go in there and there's nobody in there. Once you are in the building, the residential building, and you do or even you don't find anybody, once you go to leave, you have to secure the building. You can't just leave that window broken. So if the fire department's there, you're going to have them take some hammer and nails and somehow secure that window shut using some type of wood or whatever they might have, and they do carry it on the fire trucks. If there's a neighbor who will come in and take charge of the building, that's great. Or if you find a phone number of somebody, maybe it's a relative, have them come by and take charge of the building. But you cannot leave, or should I say the fire department can't leave, until that building is secured one way or another. If you're on an ambulance with the patient, you probably left already, and it's not your problem. Now, there's two different types of access. It's just really, pardon the French, it's really simple. Simple access means you open the door, you open the window. There's no need for tools, essentially. If the patient's trapped in the vehicle and they're sitting there and they're looking at you, you have them, sir, could you carefully, without moving too much, roll down your window? Could you unlock your door? You're not causing any damage to the vehicle. You're not using any tools. That's simple access. Anytime you use a tool, whether it's a screwdriver or whether it's a chainsaw or a Hurst tool or a hammer or an axe, that's complex access. You're going to break something you're going to cut something to get in to access this patient. And again, primarily this is going to be the fire department. So as an EMT, if you're a trained EMT firefighter, you will have this training to do this. Once you've accessed the patient, once you get into the vehicle, remember the vehicle is locked, chalked, and blocked. It's safe to enter. You have your full PPE on, all your turnouts and your helmet and your gloves and your goggles because all the glass and stuff in there. One person's going to go inside the vehicle. They're going to start ABCs, maybe oxygenation if that's appropriate, stop any uncontrolled bleeding. Just do the real minimal primary assessment. And then by that time, your partners will have started to remove parts of the vehicle to make it easier for you to get out with the patient, or they'll start opening the doors to get a spine board in there so you can side the person out. And I think we're done with this chapter.